The brutality of VHS.
VHS 2.
It's the first one. Where's the first one? Let's see our history. Don't worry, there's no porn history. What do you mean? Where is it? 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 Huh? It disappeared. But I mean, what? The brutality of VHS. It's gone. It's gone. What? Was it deleted? Let's see. Brutality of VHS. Oh, there. Here we go.
I mean, now is the first time we've been apart since high school, and I just.
Ooh. Okay, that got me. That got me.
VHS is a found footage horror anthology set that looks at the trend of found footage movies and goes, what if we did that? But 6 times. Started by the guys over at Bloody Disgusting, VHS uses the technique of taking a bunch of trusted filmmakers and essentially giving them free rein to create their own individual horror short that would be completely separate from the others, but still be woven into the overall fabric of the story. The overall story being a bunch of degenerates doing a bunch of degenerate things. A criminal gang known for various different criminal activities, such as breaking windows and light fixtures. I know, really hardcore stuff.
Whoa, that's so criminal.
Yeah, man, I'm a criminal. I like to break lights and glass and
Are hired by an anonymous source to break into someone's house to steal a specific VHS tape, probably someone's misplaced fetish video that they really don't want getting out of there. After establishing
It's
just how
auto-generated.
truly reprehensible these characters are, by showing them recording themselves assaulting a woman in public to sell the footage, filming romantic partners without their consent, and smashing up abandoned buildings like a 14-year-old boy named Kyle, whose mom just cut him off from his Monster Energy supply. They break into
No,
a house to
not
then
the
discover
Monster
the corpse of
Energy
an old man sitting
supply.
in front of several televisions. Because what's better than watching TV? Watching 4 TVs. And as this bunch of criminal masterminds not only record themselves committing a crime, they neglect to wear gloves, leaving fingerprints all over a crime scene that just happens to contain an old dead dude. In other words,
Why would you record? Why would you record in a place where there's a dead guy? I mean, these guys are like criminals, I guess, but what?
it's not a good look. One of the men is left in the room with the body as the others head off looking for the tape, and he decides to sit down.
No, why would you separate? Why would you separate in an abandoned home? Or in a home where there's a dead guy? You guys should stick together. They not know Horror
Down
101.
on the floor, right in front of the rotting corpse behind him, like a 6-year-old sitting down to watch the Saturday morning cartoons with their dad sitting right behind them. Just this time with a lot less belt whipping. And as he does, Amateur Night, directed by David
I didn't get the belt whip. I got the chancla. I got the chinelas, the slippers.
Buckner begins to play. Why is it called Amateur Night, you ask? Well, a group of friends, Shane and Patrick, get their buddy Clint to put on a pair of spy glasses to record themselves going out, getting drunk, and bringing hot chicks home to play a nice friendly game of Monopoly. And Patrick just happens to
Monopoly?
be the most annoying, obnoxious frat bro you could ever possibly imagine. Could you please just, not do that, Patrick? After heading out to a few bars, Clint's approached by a woman who looks
Bro, look at those eyes! No, that's so unsettling. That's so unsettling. And you'll find out why.
as if the few grams of mushrooms she downed earlier have just kicked in full force, and she doesn't seem to quite recognize what planet she's on anymore. She tells him that she likes him, and Clint, apparently being the fan of the clearly mentally absent types that look like they probably used to
Oh
help,
my
to
god.
tag along
Look at
as
her.
annoying drunk
Look
frat
at
bro
her.
gets kicked out of the bar before proceeding to annoyingly drive drunk back to their motel
Why would
room
you
for the
have-
night. Once they get
You
back
really
to the
go
room,
out with
Clint
someone with
mentally prepares
eyes that
himself
wide?
by repeatedly spitting into the bathroom sink for some reason, because I guess he just really hates sinks. And when he heads back into the room, he sits with the girl, as she then proceeds to hiss at annoying drunk guy. Yeah, me too, sister. After the girl that
Hiss.
Shane brought home passes out, Shane moves over to the hissing lady in an attempt to initiate a, group activity. You know, Monopoly. And as the camera pans
Yeah,
down,
Monopoly.
you can see that she'd quite clearly benefit from the use of a pumice stone for her feet, on
I used to be
account of them
like-
suddenly looking all demonic. But being too drunk to realize or care, Clint gets pulled into her face as she demonstrates for him her awesome new zombie impression that she's been
Woo.
practicing, which really seems to get Clint into the mood, as he's the type of guy who likes a girl who could eat him too. Clint then runs to the bathroom to compose himself, and probably spit in the sink a few more times, because
What?
screw that sink in particular, when suddenly Patrick barges into the bathroom as she's
Oh.
given him a danger hickey on his hand. Confused, they leave to confront her about it, but she turns around, screaming at them with a split down
Oh,
her forehead,
no.
as well as sharp fangs protruding from her mouth. To each their
She's
own.
just like
Not
me,
in
for
future,
real.
she
She a
then slices
vampire.
at Shane with her claws, before burying her teeth into his neck for the second forbidden hickey of the night. And apparently, violent situations cause Patrick to get overly excited and remove his underpants, as he then runs into the bathroom
Same.
completely naked,
Same.
despite
True.
clearly wearing boxers a matter of seconds ago. You know what? You do you, man. After poking their heads out of the door, we can see that the woman is obliging Shane's foot fetish as she's on top of him with her foot over his mouth before she jumps off the bed carrying his body with
Yeah, I don't know about you,
Those
but
must have
that
been some mushrooms. Armed with
foot,
a shower railing,
foot in the face.
Patrick's flaccid
Mm.
flappy bit hanging out. They exit the bathroom to find her practicing her yoga poses. Patrick attacks her, but she grabs the shower pole and
Yoga.
pounces onto him, causing him to scream out in pain as she begins to devour him. Clint just manages to get out of the room and begins sprinting down the walkway, but ends up slipping down the stairs and breaks his wrist. He looks up
No!
to see the woman watching him from the
Not the
staircase,
wrist.
before she then crawls right up to him, as we can see that her face is even more separated.
Ugh! Even if even if it's blurred, like we can still see, like the head is split open.
Because apparently that's a thing that happens to her when she gets excited. Once again, she tells him that she likes him, before then attempting to perform fellatio on the man with the broken wrist.
Oh, how kind. Yeah.
Attempt. Clint, struggling to get it up on account of the whole brutally massacred friends thing, watches as she appears to be embarrassed and begins to cry after realizing that Clint really isn't into the whole let's murder your friends and bang thing. After Clint manages to leave, with not just his limp wrist, her embarrassment turns into anger as Clint runs towards some local residents for help, but is suddenly thrusted up into the air by
Oh!
a woman who has now sprouted wings. And suddenly, the glasses drop from the skies above and land on the streets below.
She's
If
me.
Amateur Night seems familiar to you, in 2016, it was adapted into a feature-length movie
She's just like
called
me.
Siren. I haven't seen it, but something tells me that it's got something to do.
Yeah, it's like a short movie. Yeah, Vendor-san. Yeah, there's a movie of this without the documentary. It's called VHS. VHS.
With a chick whose head splits down the middle or something. And as the tape ends, we see, thanks to the criminals who were kind enough to document themselves
Girl
committing a burglary,
who portrays
a
the
man
eyes
enters
girls
the
look
room
like
to
Rose
discover
McGowan.
that the guy who sat down in front of the rotting geriatric has gone missing. So after heading down into the basement, for a brief but apparent non-concerning run-in with a large unclothed man, decides to head back upstairs, put another tape in, and
Why would you stay? Why would you stay? Your friend disappears, and then you see some unknown figure passing by, and you decide to let's keep going. Why? Why?
and record his face a few years before reaction channels became a thing on YouTube. Tape number 2 is called Second Honeymoon and is directed by T. West, that follows the newlywed couple, Sam and Stephanie, as they record their road trip to Arizona, as well as a rather messy attempt to consummate a marriage, which involves a lot of sticky wet fluids. The tape begins with Stephanie talking into the camera, are about to go on a road trip, and that they're going to capture all of their mementos and memories. It plays out
Oh,
in a very
nice.
traditional family home video style at first, with just a bunch of random shots filming the open road and local town attractions.
Take
with
me
one of those
home,
attractions being an automated
country
fortune telling machine
road.
that for $1 gives them a card, and in a rather sinister moment of foreshadowing, tells them that there's going to be a happy reunion with a loved one that will make life all that they ever wanted, as well as saying that you have a very trusting nature and are easily taken in by so-called friends. which I'm sure totally isn't hinting at anything that's going to happen later. They rent a room for the night,
What?
and after Sam repeatedly attempts and fails to get Stephanie to undress on camera, despite her saying no multiple times, they're interrupted by a sudden and loud knock at the door because apparently someone really doesn't like naked women. It then cuts to Sam, explaining that it was a girl who knocked on the door and that she was asking if they could give her a ride, and he tells the camera that there was just something off about her. While not feeling physically intimidated by the girl, apparently her presence alone was enough to make him feel uncomfortable. Later that night, the couple's camera suddenly turns on, but we see that both Sam and Stephanie are both sound asleep in their beds.
No! 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 Who's recording?
Separate beds, because girls have cooties. After filming Sam sleeping, the mystery person begins to caress a sleeping Stephanie with a knife, because apparently they're just a really big weirdo like that, before then deciding to make their way over to Sam's wallet and steal all of the cash inside. And after deciding that stealing all of his cash just wouldn't be fun enough, they then proceed to dunk his toothbrush in the toilet before putting it right back where they found it with a little turd-filled cherry on top. The next morning,
Yeah, dude. You know what? I'm gonna steal your money, but, you know, I'll do you one a solid. I'll put your toothbrush in the toilet. How do you like that?
we then see Sam ignorantly brushing his teeth
No! No!
with the flavor of someone else's ass water masked by the mint before the couple head off to visit
Not the
Grand
ass
Canyon.
water.
The only thing that's grand about it is the theft, as Sam discovers that his money is missing. He seems upset and blames Stephanie for it, before then suddenly seeming happy as we see someone filming them with the view of the Grand Canyon at their backs. Because nothing's gonna make you forget about having all of your money stolen, quite like a bunch of rocks. Later that night, back at the motel room,
no.
with Sam craving the taste of some more poop water, he suggests that they split up their trip and to head to Vegas, because apparently he's feeling lucky. Followed by him immediately not being lucky, as someone turns on the camera as he sleeps and thrusts a knife into his throat before leaving him to drown in his own blood.
He's
What a lucky
dead.
guy. We then see the killer cleaning their hands in the bathroom, before then turning to a surprisingly unalarmed Stephanie after just witnessing her husband's inside juices make their way to the outsides, before the pair begin to swap saliva, because nothing gets the gears going quite like severing a man's wind.
No, no, they were together. No! She was in on it.
Stephanie was right, she would certainly be capturing all of their mementos, and there definitely was a reunion with a loved one by the looks of it, although I do question their definition of a happy reunion. As the tape finishes, it cuts back to the man watching, shocked and
Where's the guy? Where's the old man?
confused about what he's just witnessed.
Where's the
did
dead
that dude
man?
just really use the poop toothbrush? But rather ominously,
Bruh.
the dead body is no longer sitting behind him, and he hasn't realized. And with him apparently being quite the fan of homemade snuff, the next tape begins to play. Tuesday the 17th, directed by Glenn McQuaid, because I guess Thursday the 14th was taken or something. The third tape begins with a group of friends, Joey, Spider, Samantha, and new to the friend
Oh,
group,
group of
Wendy,
friends.
on their way to
You know,
visit a lake
my favorite
that
horror
apparently Wendy
thing. It
visits
starts with a
every
group
year
of friends.
alone, which is totally
Then,
not serial
oh,
killer behavior. And on the journey,
oh.
they each discover that they were invited individually for Wendy to then go behind their backs and invite the others anyway, which is still totally not serial killer behavior. After arriving, the second most horrifying thing to happen is Joey eating this bug.
Oh,
second to
why?
his t-shirt that really needs to be ironed. And as they begin walking through the woods, weird things begin happening as Joey
Why?
films the area. And by weird things, I mean dead people keep appearing in the footage. Wendy has Joey film a shot of a wall, only for the camera to glitch and reveal a shot
Oh.
of a dead woman laying against it. The same exact thing happens again, except instead of a dead woman up against a wall, it's a naked dude face down in a stream, attempting to use his little worm as fish bait. They all then proceed to
Oh,
get a little
no.
too intimate with a tree for some reason, before Wendy turns to Joey and tells him that they're all going to die up here, which does
I've
now
never
seem
seen
to
a
be
tree
bordering
like
on
that.
serial killer behavior, to be honest. Not really helped by the fact that when they all sit down by the lake, Wendy proceeds to joke with them all, telling them about a group of friends that were viciously killed up here in the past. But Joey decides
If you hear that, it's time to go. It's time to go. Why would you stay there if there's a story like that in the woods?
to lighten the mood by showing off his 1-inch wonder as he strips down and jumps
1-inch
into the
wonder.
lake before pretending to drown. What a good group of friends, telling each other that they're going to die and pretending to horrifically drown in front of them. Good old-fashioned wholesome fun. Spider and Samantha then head off deeper into the woods so she can pee, because I guess she just needs to hold someone's hand while she does it or something. When all of a sudden, something or someone, obscured by glitching pixels, launches a knife into the back of her skull, causing her eyeball to hang out of its socket when it should really be in its socket. Spider takes off running, but after falling for the old horror trope of, well, literally falling, he has a knife repeatedly thrusted into his skull, as the camera just happened to generously land in a way that perfectly frames it all for the audience to see. Wendy then comes across the camera, and leaning into the whole serial killer vibe, she doesn't appear to be alarmed at all. She returns to Joey and tells him that the others have left and that she wants to sleep with him, but it would seem that the idea of coitus reminds Joey of brutally dying, as he suddenly realizes that Wendy wasn't joking about the killings earlier, as he recalls an article about the incident. So confronted, she tells him that she brought the group up here because she needed bait, and as she's telling that to him, once again the camera begins to glitch, and the obscured pixelated entity approaches Joey from behind and cuts open his neck. Wendy takes off running into the forest and lures the creature into a trap that she somehow had the chance to set with all of her friends here. And even if she didn't have all of her friends with her, then surely the creature would have been able to pick her up alone. Either way, the magically appearing trap doesn't seem to work, and the creature just keeps on coming. Next, she lures it into a bear trap, and for some reason decides that it's a good idea to walk close enough to get sliced.
Why would you go close to the?
She runs off a little further into the woods and decides that now is a good time to talk to the camera and say that if anyone ever watches this, then never come out into these woods, despite her quite literally coming out into the woods.
Yeah, you brought them there. What? You're the reason they're all there. What? You sacrificed your friends for that thing.
And bringing a group of people with her. Wendy then spots Joey walking aimlessly through the woods with the little known condition named "I have a giant hole in my neck" before he collapses to the floor and dies. The creature then begins to approach, and yet again manages to walk directly into one of Wendy's traps, as if this is an episode of Looney Tunes with Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner or something. The creature has a spike thrusted through its face, and as she thinks it's over, suddenly it begins to violently shake, before somehow appearing above and pouncing from a tree, before it makes a really obnoxious mess by taking Wendy to the ground and pulling her insides out all over the place. As the tape comes to an end, it appears that the old man has come back from his midnight stroll, but the burglar
welcome back.
tape has now disappeared. Were they playing hide and seek or something? And as the final two burglars discover yet another one of their men has gone missing, they decide to do the exact same thing yet again and have one guy sit on the floor to watch a bunch of VHS tapes, accompanied by a rotting old dude in the corner. As
why
the other
would you
heads off
stay?
into the house to look
Why
around.
would you separate?
Well, it worked well enough the last 3 times. Once again, another man sits down, hoping to find this creepy dead dude's treasure trove of
I'm
naughty
anxious,
movies, and the 4th tape begins to play. The 6th thing that happened to Emily when she was younger, directed by Joe Swanberg, the guy who played the bedwetter in the second honeymoon tape. This one takes the concept of found footage and approaches it from a different angle, as it's entirely told through recorded video chat sessions, a few years before the likes of Unfriended and Host would do something similar. The tape begins by introducing us to Emily and her boyfriend James, a doctor in training, as Emily is complaining about a strange bump on her arm that she has no memory of getting, which seems to remind her of a similar incident that happened to her as a child. But with James being a few hundred miles away from her, instead of doing the smart thing and telling the love of his life to go get that strange lump checked out, he tells her to just leave it alone, which apparently gets her in the mood to remove all of her clothes. It then cuts to a different day as the couple
thank you
video
for
chatting,
following.
and Emily is giving James a tour of her apartment. She then takes him to a location where she tells him that she's been hearing footsteps in the night, and instead of just immediately, I don't know, burning it all to the ground, she tells him that she'll call him next time.
Thanks for following, Ink.
Which is exactly what happens next, as she calls him in the middle of the night and tells him that there's something outside of her door, and as the door handle moves on its own, Emily opens the door to reveal that there's nothing there. She then sits down in her bedroom while making the rookie mistake of not closing the door behind her. Always close the door behind you when there's a demonic tiptoeer in your house.
Yeah,
She
that's
tells
a good
James
point.
that this isn't exactly new to her, as this type of thing also happened when she was 12 years old, when suddenly a small child appears in the doorway behind her, runs into the room, and slams the door shut.
If that you see that, you run. You leave that house. Don't even come back for your stuff. Just leave. You know, being homeless is better than being in a haunted house.
and that's your cue to delete the entire
Heading
apartment.
off. Good
But
night.
apparently not for
Good
Emily,
night,
as it then cuts
Irene.
to the next morning, as she's for some reason still
Good
inside the
night.
apartment that strangely isn't a flaming inferno. She discusses with James what exactly it is that they saw last night, and instead of saying demon child, James suggests that it was just a breeze. A breeze with 2 arms and 2 legs that looks suspiciously like a child.
Whoa.
But okay, James. Come night, she once again calls James. Due to strange noises outside of her door, so armed with a pair of scissors, she goes to investigate. Although she'd have better luck being armed with a priest, to be honest.
No,
With the light not working in the living room,
don't bring
she
the
resorts to using the
scissors.
camera flash to see the room. And see the room she indeed does. A room with a small child sitting on the floor, who suddenly begins sprinting towards her. Just kick it really hard. And the next day,
Kick it
we
really
see
hard.
Emily attempting to cut the limb out of her arm. And it's not just a little cut either. Emily is digging around inside of her arm as if she's looking for treasure. But James manages to talk her out of the whole severe self-mutilation thing, and then it cuts to them at night again. Except this time, Emily's got a plan. She's going to close her eyes so she won't be scared, and is going to attempt to talk to the child. She closes her eyes,
No, that's
faces
not a
the
good
laptop
idea.
forwards, and opens the door. After being guided into the living room by James, the camera then pans to reveal multiple children, as it then suddenly cuts to Emily laying on the floor with all of the kids sitting around her. James suddenly gets up from his computer and walks right through the front door of Emily's apartment, meaning that he's either an incredibly fast runner or he's been in the building the whole time. He slices open her back, and after rummaging around her insides like a child opening
was
a
in on
present
it as
on
well.
Christmas Day, he pulls out what appears to be an undeveloped baby and says to the children, "So you're telling me this thing is part human, and how many more times are you going to do this?" Insinuating that apparently it's quite common for James to go rummaging around people's insides in search of babies, followed by him then saying that he'll need to make it look like an accident, before then cutting to another video chat session as Emily's face is bruised and her arm is in a sling. She tells James that after visiting a doctor highly recommended by his colleagues, his little demon children colleagues, she's been diagnosed as schizoaffective, which gives James the perfect excuse to explain away all of the recent strange
Children just make
happenings,
horror
the
movies
baby
scarier.
stealing.
I know.
And as Emily is beaten and distraught, it cuts to James on video chat with another woman as she's complaining about the exact same strange bump on her arm that Emily had. The brutal cycle is continuing, because apparently James is quite the womanizer, stroke ghost fetus stealer. But according to my trusted source, otherwise known as Wikipedia, apparently they're aliens and not strange ghost kids.
No, they're
Fool me.
aliens.
Back with Dumb and Dumber, we see that it's just dumb and, well, dumb. Because not only is the dead body missing once again, but so
Bro, you leave. If it's just you there, just leave.
is the guy who was watching the tapes, leaving one final burglar alone in the house. He returns to the room to discover them both gone, confused but not too alarmed, leading me to believe that it's quite common for his buddy to up and leave with a rotting corpse, for reasons YouTube won't allow me to talk about, before he suddenly hears something running across the house. And after investigating, he finds the decapitated remains of one of his friends, before seeing the dead man, being very much not dead,
No!
standing directly in front of him. He
He's
backs
alive.
up and falls down the stairs, before being killed by the man, as it appears he's become some kind of zombie-like creature, or perhaps just some cranky old dude who really doesn't appreciate being woken from his nap. It then cuts to the fifth and final tape, because I guess there's no better way for an elderly zombie creature to relax and unwind after pretending to be asleep for an hour and a half. The fifth tape is called 10/31/98, directed by a trio of filmmakers known as
Just
Radio Silence.
do it.
As I'm sure
Hello,
you guessed by the name
Sparrow.
of the tape, it takes place on Halloween night in the year 1998. That is, unless you live
1998.
literally anywhere else but the United States and are wondering why there's suddenly 31 months all of a sudden. Tyler, dressed up as a bear with a hidden camera in, is meeting up with his
Ooh,
buddies,
hello, Sparrow.
Chad, Matt and Paul, as they're off to attend a Halloween party for the night.
Oh,
And after
no.
getting confused with the
Not an
similar-sounding street
Halloween.
names, they arrive at what they think is the party. A party for silent, invisible people, apparently, because there's nobody there. After just assuming that they're early, they find an unlocked door and begin walking around.
Why
the
would you
house.
go in
They
there?
joke about the flickering
If there's
lights,
nobody in
making
there,
fun of the poor attempt to be
no.
spooky, when suddenly
People
Tyler
in
turns
horror
around
movies
to see a
are the
floating
dumbest
PNG of a
people
lost
ever.
child standing at the bottom of the stairs.
Oh, no, you
The
go-
other
you
guys
leave.
Then enter the room, laughing about the hands that they've just seen coming out of the walls, claiming that these are actually some good Halloween decorations.
No, they're
And
not.
After hearing noises coming from upstairs and assuming that's just where the party is, they decide to head up and take a look. And after entering a room, Tyler spots the child again in the reflection of a mirror before the lights go out
No.
and the door slams shut behind him. Thinking that it's either his friends messing with him or part of the Halloween party, he heads even further up the house as the friends
No.
can hear what sounds to be a kind of chanting coming from the attic. This party's starting to sound pretty cool. And after walking up there, they see a group of men performing some kind of ritual around a tied-up woman. And unfortunately, not the kinky kind of tied up, but they're performing an exorcism kind of tied up. The friends are suddenly noticed by the confused men, and as one of the men hits the woman and the friends attempt to intervene, people suddenly begun to be flung across the room, as it becomes incredibly clear to the friends that yes, they're in the wrong house. They just gate-crashed an exorcism. As they start sprinting their way out of the house,
Run.
Tyler stops
Good
them all at the
evening,
front door, and
JRL.
they turn around and head back for the captive woman.
No, why
Tyler's
would you go back for the woman? They're exercising the woman. She's the bad. No, they're gonna help the demon woman because they're shimps.
wanted a pet demon chick, and after making it to the attic once again, one of the men attacks Tyler, but is suddenly thrown up into the ceiling, because apparently the force is strong with this one. As they cut the woman free and fight
Why
off
would
the
you
men,
save her?
hands begin to emerge from the floor. They run as doors begin flying off their hinges, and handprints appear along the walls. They make it
I
back
got a
to
Michael
the front
Myers
door,
ad.
when it begins
Lovely.
to morph and close right before their very eyes. More hands begin to emerge from the walls, and more pots and pans are launched around the kitchen than a single mother having a
No.
mental breakdown, as the men are forced down into the basement after the back door handle disappears.
Oh.
They just manage to break free from the basement, seconds before being captured by the rather fondly hands trying to cup a feel, and speed off in their car with the woman in the back seat. After the woman loses consciousness, the car suddenly stalls, and she disappears. She screams at them from outside of the window, when suddenly they see her in front of
Oh,
the car
no.
and realise that the doors won't open. And if being screamed at by some random freaky lady wasn't enough, they realise that they've stopped right in the middle of the train tracks, and there's a train hurtling right towards them. And in their last moments of frantic panic, they desperately try to free themselves from the car, but are ultimately forced to sit inside of their metal coffin as the train collides with the car, and the tape, as well as the movie, comes to an end.
I mean,
And that brings
that's
us to
what
the
you
end
get
of
for
the
helping
found
the
footage
demon
horror
one.
anthology VHS, which is actually the first in a series of 3 other movies. 3 movies that I am actually yet to see, which could potentially make for some good videos if you guys wanted to see them. And before we
Yeah. That was VHS. The summary of VHS. Let's watch VHS 2, then it'll probably be it for the stream. Good, you know, does really make a woman
VHS
act
2
up.
is the type of movie that looks at VHS 1
Oh.
and goes, let's do that, but again. Being rushed straight into production as soon as it was clear the original was going to be a success.
Also
the
need to
second
pay to
movie
experience
follows
the horror?
more or less the same basic formula
Oh,
that
no.
worked well the first time. You know, degenerates doing degenerate things while having a big slumber party to watch some creepy old dead dudes videos. Except this time, instead of a criminal gang consisting of a bunch of hyped up 14-year-old kids smashing stuff, it's private investigators secretly filming people during their intimate moments and then extorting them with said footage of their intimate moments.
If I don't hear from you by tomorrow, your wife gets that phone. Goodbye.
Yeah, still a criminal gang actually. The movie begins with someone filming
Yeah,
a
that's
couple
still, like,
while
extortion
simultaneously
and
having an
blackmail.
asthma attack by the sound of his breathing as he peeks through their motel window and watches them perform acts that God would greatly
Don't shit
disapprove
your
of.
pants.
He's not exactly great at the whole don't get caught perving on people thing and is more or less
I be
immediately
shitting.
spotted before being chased down the street by a
When I
naked
want,
guy with his fleshy
where I
parts
want.
flapping about in the wind. Next on the agenda for the PI named Larry and girlfriend Aisha is that they're tasked with helping to locate a mother's missing son named Kyle. So being the law-abiding citizens that they are,
Kyle.
they immediately break into his house and discover the living room full of TVs
Why
and an
would you
open
break
laptop.
in?
Larry touches a drop of wet blood on the wall, because apparently he likes to collect blood-borne diseases, and Aisha finds a recording of Kyle on the laptop as he discusses finding a new tape, the latest addition to his collection of foot videos. Aisha puts the tape in
The guy looks like the least. He looks like the least suspicious person out there.
and sets the camera down facing her as if she's getting ready to record the next episode of her YouTube reaction series. Just
love
instead of
Badlands
silly little
chugs.
internet videos, it's silly little people horrifically being unalived videos. And as she does, we see someone appear in the doorframe behind her as the first
No.
tape begins to play. Because I guess this is their favorite one or something.
No.
The first tape is called Phase 1 Clinical Trials, directed by Adam Wingard. The tape begins with a man named Herman receiving an experimental eye implant free of charge after damaging
Ugh.
his previous one in a car accident. The doctor tells him that there may be a few visual glitches at first due to it being experimental, and that they're going to need to record everything for the time being to allow them to collect data.
Why would you
Data
get that eye
consists of
implant?
whatever freaky things he's into, because I doubt this thing comes with an incognito mode. Well, he could always just keep one of his eyes closed. And the side effect of this being recorded through his literal eye socket is the
Hello,
constant
Kabute.
blinking. Because unfortunately, that's a thing people do. Stupid, inconsiderate people. If you thought shaky cam was annoying, now we've got blinky cam. After receiving every introvert's worst nightmare, and being awkwardly stared at by a woman in the lobby, he heads home and decides to pass some time with some video games.
Damn
After getting
right.
up to make himself a drink, he returns to notice that his controller has now been moved,
No.
before suddenly, his kettle is flung on the floor behind him. Apparently this
Oh.
poltergeist is thirsty, and really doesn't want to be player 2. He then heads into his bedroom to discover what appears to be a person lying in his bed, and Herman reacts to the sight of this narcoleptic intruder by saying, hello?
Hello?
Nice one, Herman. He pulls back the blanket to reveal nothing, before turning around to reveal very much something. And by something, I mean a freaky looking zombie guy staring directly at him, who looks like he's about to bum a
Oh my
cigarette.
god.
He locks himself in the bathroom because he suffers from really bad anxiety poos, before it then cuts to him on the phone with the doctor as he questions his definition of a
Hey,
visual
thank you
glitch.
for
Because of that,
following.
he then leaves his bathroom to then be startled by a creepy child standing
Real
in his doorway
Sakura kiddo.
before she appears
Thanks
right
for
in front
following.
of him to ask if he's got any games on his phone. He's straight back into the bathroom.
You got games
because
on your
IBS is no
phone.
joke, before hearing multiple knocks at the door. It then cuts to him waking up the next morning in the bathtub, because apparently he couldn't take a little 7-year-old girl on, and proceeds to immediately fall right back to sleep on the sofa. for a post-nap nap.
Why would you fall
Hours
asleep in
later,
the same
he wakes
house?
up to find the same woman who was awkwardly staring
Good
at him
at
in
all
the
saying.
hospital lobby, awkwardly staring at him through his gate. The woman's name is Clarissa, and she tells him that she was born deaf, but when she was 16, she was given an implant that allowed her to hear. Hear a little too well apparently, as shortly after receiving the implant, she began hearing the dead. And she tells him that she could hear a crying child as she came inside his house. Yeah, Herman didn't have any games on his phone. Clarissa tells
No.
Herman that the implants allow them to
There's no
interact
games
with
on your
what other
phone.
people can't see. And the more that they do interact with the dead,
Oh!
the more they can be hurt by them. Before Herman looks up to see a dude just chilling in his tighty whities.
Oh.
But that's no ghost though. That's just Greg. She tells him that the man that she can see is actually her uncle, and that she knows of a way
Hey,
to make
uncle.
them leave, before proceeding to immediately remove all of her clothes, so Herman can give her an implant of his own. While her
What?
uncle watches. Bit weird that. After waking up from their demon expelling session, Herman once again finds someone lying in his bed. Ignoring Clarissa's advice to not interact with them, he proceeds to immediately interact with them, and acts all surprised to find a creepy little dead girl in his bed. He then sees
No.
Clarissa get dragged outside.
Why would you
into the
interact
pool
with
before
them?
They're both pulled into the water as he tries to save her. As they both frantically struggle to try and free themselves, eventually Clarissa succumbs to the water and drowns, while Herman just kind of
No.
climbs out of the pool to leave her there. Talk about pump and dump. Herman
And this
runs
has to
back
be a
into the
vendor.
house, and after almost being caught by a pair of ghosts in the hallway, he locks himself in the bathroom again. He picks up a razor and decides to force the implant out of his head with a little impromptu surgery. But the ghosts are absolutely appalled at the abhorrent health and safety violations of performing a surgery in the bathroom, so decide to grab him anyway and force the implant down his throat. The tape ends with the person in the doorframe gone, and Aisha shows Larry the footage of Kyle as he's talking about how the tapes can affect you, but lowers the volume just as he's about to go into detail,
Why would you
leaving
do
them
that?
unable to hear important information
May bata
that
sa
may have
likod
been
mo.
able to save them. And while Larry continues to look around the house, he tells Aisha to carry on watching the tapes in hopes of her finding a limited edition Lion King video. He's always wanted that one. And the second tape, A Ride in the Park, directed by Eduardo Sanchez, and Greg Hale begins to play. The tape begins with a guy named Mike turning on his helmet and bike
Hello,
cams
Mike.
before getting a call from his girlfriend Amy, who complains that he rides his bike more than he rides her. Don't kink shame
Oh.
Amy, not cool. After his call, he begins riding through the woods, and I begin to almost immediately throw up from motion sickness, because please for the love of God, can you get some stabilization on that camera, Mike? He's suddenly stopped dead in his tracks by a woman crying out for help, before the woman then proceeds to puke out a black substance, as Mike begins to hear something in the trees. So in response, he picks
No.
up a big stick and begins to threaten the people over there. Because of course the responsible thing to do after spotting people in the woods is to threaten them with a large stick. As he
No,
returns to the
just
woman,
run.
it appears that she's now turned into some kind of zombie-like creature and pounces onto him before biting into his neck. Mike manages to get away by upgrading his bashing stick to a bashing rock, and takes off running into the woods as the other camera captures his pursuers. He begins trudging his way through the woods, making a right mess of the place as he does, squirting his inside juices all over the place, until eventually falling to the floor and puking up the same black substance as the woman. Guinness.
What am I
Mike's got a
watching?
drinking problem. He falls down an
Can't keep
embankment
defending
and
you anymore.
seemingly dies from his injuries, as we see a man and woman approach from the distance. They find Mike, looking like he's had one too many the night before, laying in a pool of blood and puke. And when they come closer to investigate, Mike swaps his Guinness drinking
Why
problem
would you get so
for
close to a
people drinking
corpse?
problem, as he suddenly leaps up to give the man a big old sloppy kiss before taking the woman to the floor and biting her leg. Mike never did like legs. He turns around to see the man lying
Poor
on the
Mike.
floor as he's begun to change. So Mike grabs his hand and helps himself to a nice finger sandwich. He begins digging into
Finger
his,
sandwich.
insides, and the woman returns to get a taste of her own. When suddenly, the man sits up and looks directly at them as they're rudely eating his insides and not sharing any. They then stumble into a child's birthday party and gate crash the event by digging into the main course themselves.
Yeah, eat them
The
kids!
main course being
Eat
evil.
them kids!
Mike's then attacked by a man,
Ooh.
not so keen on the prospect of watching his child get eaten.
What's
After
Hank
the
from
man
Breaking
gets
Bad doing
swarmed,
there?
Mike turns his attention to a father and his 3 little girls. He's gonna gobble them up like a chicken nugget 6-piece. Mike stops to admire himself
Chicken
in the reflection
nuggets.
of a window, like the flesh-loving narcissist that he is, when someone comes up behind him and ruins his dashing good looks with a shotgun blast. And the shotgun should really work on his situational awareness, as after firing at a few more zombies, he's taken to the floor by someone who's been slowly walking over to him and growling for like the past 30 seconds. Unless he's deaf, then well, unlucky buddy. Mike then gets run over by a car after failing to look both ways, and as he's staring at a woman crying, he pulls out his phone after butt dialing his girlfriend. After hearing her tell him she loves him, and not wanting a simp for a girlfriend, Mike crawls his way over to the boom boom stick, places it beneath his chin, and his head is sent flying into the stratosphere.
Wait,
After
how?
the tape ends,
I thought he was a
Larry walks
zombie
back into the
already.
room to find Aisha sitting there in a trance, likely still feeling queasy from the bike scene that looked like it was filmed by
Because
someone
it's
with
a-
late-stage Parkinson's disease. So he startles her back into reality and notices that her nose is bleeding. She tells him that she also has a migraine, but forgot to bring her medication with her. And with Aisha not wanting to move, the lazy ass, Larry decides to leave his unwell girlfriend alone in a house that they've just broken into.
Just
that's
leave the
absolutely full to
house.
the brim with freaky tapes, and not the type that you keep under your bed. After
Leave
Larry leaves,
the
we
house.
see someone looking for their precious, doing their best
Oh,
Smeagol
no.
impression, as he just stays there, watching Aisha as the 3rd tape plays. Safe Haven, directed by Timo Chianto and Gareth Evans. Someone will still tell me I pronounced that wrong. The 3rd tape begins in Indonesia, as we follow Malik, his girlfriend Lena, Adam and Joni, as they're about to begin filming a documentary about the
Ayy.
Paradise Gates cult.
My
And if there's
Indonesian
one thing
brothers.
that I know about cults, it's that they make for a really good documentary. It cuts to them interviewing a rather strong-boned man as they sit down with the leader of the cult known as Father, as he enjoys a nice
Hello,
refreshing
Father.
glass of milk and tells them all about a higher plane of existence that he and his members are soon to reach. But for some odd reason, the only way to reach this higher plane of existence is to give this guy all of your money and let him be your wife.
Huh.
Weird that. Lena manages to convince the man to allow them into the commune by promising to tell the real story, before then cutting to various different CCTV cameras showing a man dragging 2 heavy bags, definitely not containing children, a classroom full of children,
Yeah, that's
and a room
definitely
that looks
not
like they designed
containing
it
children.
straight out of a How to Be a Demonic Cult guide. The film crew arrive outside of the commune and are greeted by a young girl and a woman known only as Madame. After handing Lena a necklace, the girl accidentally lets slip that she's not a child anymore, as their father took care of that. Their father being the cult leader and resident kiddie diddler. After
No!
entering, Lena immediately discards of the necklace
Father, why?
because ooh, gross, and they make their way deeper into the building, passing by various rooms filled with members, where they're then taken to meet with the father in his office. And just as they're about to start their interview, Lena suddenly gags at the thought of this weird little dude downing another glass of milk and leaves to find a restroom, shortly followed by Adam. Lena, with a hidden camera in her shirt, walks into the classroom to be completely ignored by the children. Ignorant little things. Before Madame walks in and tells her that her children will be far more beautiful than these. Essentially telling a classroom full of kids that they're all ugly to their face. Indonesians are just built different. Back with Malik. Father tells him that people bring their wives and children to him so that he can wash away their impurities. Which, yes, I'm pretty sure means exactly what you think it does.
No,
Johnny, being
no.
the camera guy and having the one and only job to take care of the camera equipment, forgot to charge its battery, so Malik runs back to the car to get another one. And as he checks the trunk of the car, he can see a live feed of Adam's camera, where he overhears Lena say to Adam that she's pregnant and that he's the father. In other words, a really big yikes moment. Father tells
Yikes.
Johnny that it's time and begins an announcement over the loudspeakers by saying that today we will reach our salvation, and Lena watches on as a classroom full of children are all handed cups to drink from as Adam stumbles
No, I'm
across a
sure
room
nothing
covered in
bad-
blood
bad
after
is it?
running off and having a tantrum because he learnt that these little things called his actions result in these little things called consequences. Oh no, poor me. I slept with my best friend's fiancé and now have to face reality. Adam pulls back the curtain to discover someone in an operating room covered in a sheet looking like they haven't had the greatest time. He pulls back the cover to reveal the woman's face, and she suddenly wakes up with her stomach split down the middle. And with the thought of being a father already a disturbing thought for Adam, he runs away from this woman too. Back with Father, he's now removing his clothes for some reason, presumably mistaking Johnny for one of his wives/children that he's so fond of. He jumps up onto the table wielding a knife
What the
before
hell?
pouncing onto Johnny like the topless, sweaty madman that he
Johnny,
is, and
Johnny,
driving
yes,
it into his
papa.
neck, before giving
guy.
Johnny permanent easy access to his windpipe, just in case he ever needed it. Lena's snatched away by a group of creepy little girls doing their best to uphold their PPE regulations, and Adam opens the classroom to find everyone taking a permanent sleep with their drinks spilt. Talk about crying over spilt milk. Malik comes sprinting back into the building and finds a group of men standing in a room when all of a sudden they raise loaded weapons to their heads and pull the triggers. A man is seen trying to run away, but is shot down by someone else, before the man then fires at Malik. But Malik, bringing a trash can to a gunfight, manages to
with
wrestle
the
the
steel
man for
chair.
the weapon before the man proceeds to aim it towards himself and pulls the trigger too. And before
Why?
Malik even has time to comprehend what he's just witnessed, he's knocked to the ground and dragged away. Adam, sprinting through the building, trying his best to avoid the responsibilities of parenthood and the occasional bullet, turns the corner to see someone
my
about
God.
to execute Malik. Adam attempts
No,
to stop the man,
don't
but
do
the
it
man
to
turns
Malik.
anyway and pulls the trigger.
Well,
Before we then see, from the
see you,
perspective of
Malik.
Malik's camera, the man turns the weapon on himself. Hearing the screams of Lena and
Why didn't you
deciding
shoot
that
him
he may
first
as well
before-
give this whole being a
Okay.
damn thing a shot, Adam finds Lena being dragged away by a group of hysterically laughing women
Oh, that's
and their
a-
dancing father
that's
wearing
creepy.
nothing but his undies. After arming himself with a pipe, in a building full of readily available much better weapons, like a trash can, he begins walking down the hallway. But right as he reaches the door,
no.
it suddenly explodes, and something looking like it'll need a good few cans of bug spray to deal with scurries its way across the ceiling. Father then begins walking his way down the hallway when suddenly he too explodes. What exactly do they put in Indonesian milk? After entering the room with Lena and brutally beating one woman with a pipe, because screw that one woman in particular I guess, he pulls the hands from the other women who are attempting to hold Lena down. Remind me to never arm wrestle Adam. Lena begins screaming to get it out of her, before pulling back her shirt to reveal a baby bump, and said baby wriggling around inside of her like it's a chest burster, before proceeding to do exactly that. Chest burst. A spike pierces its way out of her stomach, before a large horned creature begins climbing its way out of her insides, as if her uterus is the
Holy
TARDIS or something.
shit.
Small on the outside, big on the inside. Adam, having second
Got a
thoughts
mini
about being the sole
Godzilla there.
caregiver of this child, runs away and finds that Johnny has been turned into a zombie, and that all of the
Johnny,
children
Johnny.
have risen from the dead and are now singing nursery rhymes in class. Adam then sees Adam Jr., aka Big Boy Baphomet himself,
Oh.
and takes off running as it throws Johnny, seeing all manners of horrific things as he goes. After running directly into a group of zombies,
Hello,
he manages to make it through them and comes
Meowy,
face to face with zombie
Meowy,
Malik.
Meowy.
And being the great friend that he is,
How
not
are you,
only does he
Mayari?
impregnate Malik's fiancée, but he also smashes his head against the wall for good luck. He gets into the car and begins speeding away, as the sound of the creature can be heard roaring in the distance.
Hey,
That
get
is,
out of
until it
there.
closes the
Finally,
distance,
someone smart
rams
enough-
the car
never
from
mind.
the side and sends it flying. And as Adam is crawling out the back of the car, the creature, now with sprouted wings, appears above him and
Oh.
calls him Papa. Ah, Daddy captured his first word on camera. Adam then begins maniacally laughing, with an equally maniacal booger hanging out of his nose, as the third tape comes to an end. Back at the house that's
Damn.
currently being broken into, and recorded by said housebreaker into us, Larry returns to find Aisha lying on the floor dead. Which, yeah, obviously. Not sure what you've really expected.
What's
leaving
up?
your
What are you
girlfriend alone in a creepy
watching,
house full of
brother? I'm
supernatural tapes and
watching
golem impersonators.
VHS
And as she's
2.
lying on the floor in a state of unalive, Larry decides that it'd be a good idea to watch a nice relaxing home video.
What? Why would you watch? Why would your girlfriend just died, so you decide, I'm gonna watch more of the VHS tapes. Makes sense.
As he spots a tape with watch written on it, and then the fourth tape begins to play. Slumber Party Alien Abduction, directed by Jason Eisner. The tape begins with a camera attached to the family dog Tank as brothers Gary and Randy goof around creating home videos. Their parents are heading off for the night, leaving Gary, Randy and their sister Jen at home. Jen's boyfriend Zach quickly shows up and proceeds to be the generic boyfriend jock character by immediately doing generic boyfriend
Yeah, I love how, like, in order to be the jock character, the jerk character, you have to wear the varsity jacket.
jock activities, so after the brothers' friends, Sean and Danny arrive, they decide to play a nice friendly game of cover my sister and her friends with urine, and unleash a barrage of urine-filled water guns and water balloons at them. And as Zach jumps into the water after them, for a split second, you can see something behind him. After nobody seems to notice it, later that night, as Jen and Zach are using each other's tongues to check for tonsil stones, the boys charge into her room, blasting music and flashing a strobe light. So to get revenge on them, later that night, Jen and Zach attach the camera to Tank again and send the dog into the room where the boys are sleeping, all but one, as he's far too preoccupied polishing his sword. As he's confronted by a laughing Jen and Zach, suddenly a loud noise erupts, a bright, disorienting light shines through the window, and the power goes out. They see what appears to be the silhouettes of people standing outside of the door, and after Zach heads off to investigate, something pounces out of the shadows and takes him. Then, without warning, a group of alien creatures swarm the room to capture the sword polisher and the rest of the kids. Or maybe they just think they stink and really need to bathe.
They
As
got
for some
Slender
reason,
Man.
The group then find themselves wrapped in what appears to be blankets and dropped into the lake. Tank and Gary are pulled from the lake by Randy and Jen, and as they perform CPR on him, something emerges from the other end of the dock and begins crawling towards them, but they just manage to resuscitate him in time and take off running into the woods. They hide amongst the trees like a group of hobbits avoiding a Nazgul, but Tank's bark alerts the aliens right as the police begin to arrive. So the kids take off running towards the flashing lights and sirens, but without warning, the aliens activate the cheat code to lose their 5-star wanted level, and the noise suddenly stops, and the police are nowhere to be seen. Randy is suddenly grabbed by the aliens, and good boy Tank is sent flying after trying to protect his friend. Gary and Jen then hide in a barn, but as the aliens begin making their way in, Gary is able to climb a ladder with Tank, but Jen is then grabbed by one of the aliens and puked on for some reason. That's just weird. Seconds before Gary is about to be grabbed, the ceiling breaks away and he's lifted into the air, before dropping Tank as he and the camera plummet towards the ground. Because apparently these aliens are in the business of dragging children and dropping dogs from really high places. Back in the house, not even a fun alien abduction movie could make Larry feel better, as he sits there all sad looking and crying as if a loved one has just died or something. Oh wait. He hits play on the laptop, and Kyle says that it's now time for him to make a tape, but not the type of tape you buy from the site that sounds awfully similar to Bonely Bands, and the bottom of his jaw
Bonely
off.
Bands.
But apparently it is but a scratch, as he sits back up with his entire jaw missing, leaving behind what could only be described as rancid deli meat, before getting up and walking it off. And moments later on the video, we then see Larry and Daisha entering the house, only moments after Kyle had pulled the trigger, leaving me to wonder if they've got hearing difficulties or something, so they didn't hear the incredibly loud bang noise that they were only a few meters away from. Okay. Rigor mortis kicks in hard as Aisha suddenly sits up and pounces onto Larry.
The girlfriend's alive.
In a struggle, he manages to break her neck, but with her body contorted and broken, she keeps on coming. He channels his inner child and hides in the bedroom closet and watches as she scurries past the door, before aiming at the doorway and firing as soon as she appears again. But before Larry can enjoy his newfound singleness, from both his girlfriend and the freaky demon chick, he turns his torch on to see Kyle sitting there. So Kyle reaches out, trying to give him a big sloppy kiss with nothing but tongue, and the movie comes to an end with Kyle killing Larry and giving a thumbs up to the camera.
Thumbs
Before
up.
we finish